Hey guys, welcome. We're going to learn about organic compounds today. So if you remember last recording, lesson 2.03, we talked about some of the macromolecules, the four main macromolecules in the human body: carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. And they were all considered organic compounds because the definition of an organic compound nowadays is that it contains carbon bonded to at least one other type of atom. Oh goodness, I've spelled atom incorrectly. Let me fix that. Bonded to at least one other type of atom. And they're used in many industries now. So with that broad definition, there's obviously many different types of what we consider organic compounds. They're not just things that you find inside animals and plants and other living things. There's things like rubber is considered an organic compound, lots of fuels, pharmaceuticals like makeup, and a lot of the medicines we take. Detergents, some of the chemicals they use in agriculture, those are all considered organic compounds because it has a carbon atom, right? It has a carbon atom bonded to at least one other type of atom, and that could be anything. A lot of times it's oxygen or hydrogen or things like that. Now, while we've been talking about carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen as the main atoms that we find in organic molecules and in the human body and animals' bodies, they are not the only important ones. There's a lot of elements called trace elements that we find in living things. And if we look at the percentage of atoms in our bodies that are members of these trace elements, they'll be really small, but nonetheless, they're really important, and we wouldn't be alive and living the way we are today without them. So let's look at a few examples of these really important trace elements. One of them we find in chlorophyll is magnesium. All chemical abbreviations Mg, and we find that in chlorophyll. In chlorophyll, if you guys don't know, we haven't learned this yet, but it's what's in plants. It's the organelle in plants where photosynthesis occurs. It's the pigment in plants where photosynthesis occurs. And there's small amounts of magnesium in this chlorophyll that allow the process of photosynthesis to happen. And we'll learn more about that later this semester. But without magnesium, then that process wouldn't be happening. Another really important thing in animals is iron in hemoglobin. So iron, abbreviation for iron, it's Fe, and that's in, let me make sure I'm spelling this correctly, hemoglobin. And hemoglobin is a compound in red blood cells. That's what carries oxygen around to our body. So we have red blood cells, and if we probably know that red blood cells carry oxygen. Hemoglobin is the compound within the red blood cells that actually bond to and carry this oxygen. And if it didn't have this iron in the hemoglobin, it would not be able to bind to oxygen, and then we wouldn't be able to get oxygen to any of our cells. So those are two examples, two really important examples of what we call, remember, trace elements. Trace meaning there's not a lot of them. We don't have a lot of iron in our bodies compared to carbon and hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, and those other elements, but it's important nonetheless, and we wouldn't be able to live without these. Same thing for plants. If they didn't have magnesium, they wouldn't be able to do photosynthesis, they wouldn't be able to make any of their own glucose, and so they probably wouldn't be alive, at least not the way that we know them today. One other really important compound or class of compounds, I guess, that use trace elements are enzymes. Enzymes. And enzymes they're proteins in your body, and they're the things that help chemical reactions happen. So almost all of the chemical reactions in your body use enzymes to make them go either better or faster. And so enzymes use a lot of zinc in them and copper. Zinc and copper. So let's put here zinc and copper. Those aren't the only two. Those are just examples. There's quite a few enzymes that have small amount of zinc or a small amount of copper in them, and those help chemical, like I said, enzymes, and you will learn more about these enzymes or proteins in your body that help chemical reactions to occur either faster and or better. Now those aren't the only examples, those are just a few that I wanted to go over. So let's review here. We have organic compounds, and they contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, in high amounts, or in large amounts. But then they also contain magnesium, iron, copper, cobalt, in tiny amounts. In tiny amounts, right? So we have organic compounds, and we know that in large amounts, there's carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and a couple others. And then we just talked about those trace elements in organic compounds, like the magnesium, the iron, the copper, the zinc, in really, really tiny amounts, but they're still really, really important. So there you have it, organic compounds.